to the moon. I wanted to be part of utopian dreams like lunar tourism in 2000 and flying saucers in every garage. I want it in now. Want it now, not in 30 or 40 years. Draw inventions. They look like fourth grader doodles, yet they have me thinking creatively. Small satellite antennas have revolutionized television and data transmission, reducing a satellite TV truck to a backpack. I tried it first, and Bell Laboratories, which invented the dial tone, said, "Oh, it won't work." But I said, "Well, I've got a prototype in the car," and it worked, which was fun. The International Space Station biometrics were added to my system subsequently. They can be worn or ingested, and we tried them twice on Everest. Because I love that age of discovery and flight, when you could land and take it back into the barn or hangar to tweak something and keep changing the model to improve the flying experience. I built a bamboo hang glider and flew a World War I reproduction aircraft in high school. Vintage aeroplane restorations are my passion. Second plane was a 1933 French Flying Flea. It looked like a soapbox derby car with two large wings and a giant motorbike engine in front of my face spinning a huge propeller. I liked its cuteness. I can make something whimsical after making my masculine World War I fighter. On October 6, 2016, I lost my engine after a circle of the airstrip on its second test flight. Since it was a vintage plane, it didn't glide, so I had little time to react. Power fell quickly when cut. Unable to access my airfield. I was in a forested, mountainous, and rocky area and could only approach a local Boy Scout camp's little lake. I went for it, overshot the bank, and hit all the tree trunks again at 70 miles per hour in a soapbox derby cart. The scratch marks on the tree trunks from my wings breaking off show where I crashed because it was a wood plane. I was surrounded by matchsticks after crashing. The only unharmed jet part was my seatbelt behind me. Luckily, a former cop fished in this Boy Scout camp. Thank goodness he didn't worry about me and the crash. He supported me by calling 911. I broke my right leg, pierced my lungs, and had a hole in my lower back from the engine battery falling off and hitting me again at 70 miles per hour. I was also badly bruised. Lung failure prevented me from breathing. Air hunger grew. After calling 911, a chopper arrived 30 to 45 minutes later. They rescued me from the wreck and flew me to Hartford's trauma center. My family came at the hospital hours later to find me intubated and on a breathing machine. My lungs failed. All of these saved me. After escaping the constraints that limited my tubing removal, the medical staff urged my family to put me into a medically induced coma for a week of day-long operations with a 2% success rate. They happily agreed, so physicians did it. I think my near death began then. I was comatose for a week yet lively on the other side. This isn't your standard near-death experience where people see themselves on an operation table, travel through a light tunnel, meet dead loved ones, witness beautiful countryside, or evaluate their life. It was different for me. I felt like I was transported to a high-rise terrace. Everything was open and gray like concrete in ruins. Broken structures formed a post-apocalyptic skyline. Imagine 1,000 years after a meteor or asteroid destroyed NYC or LA. There was no sound. It was quiet. I looked up and saw thick, heavy clouds with the mother of all storms poised to unload everything. I was queasy immediately. In pain, I grabbed my gut and whispered, "I don't think I could stand this." To my left was one of the strangest sculptures I'd seen. A large metal lattice egg sculpture contrasted with the darkest sky. I saw tiny whirling shapes and heard their whispering slow down. My words broke the silence, and I knew we were connected. I stood up and started to walk to this monolith, stomach aching. Gears were visible through the lattice. They floated in space, but pivoted around an invisible point that defined their sweeping arcs. Like clock gears, these were sector gears. Gears are wheels with teeth. That gear's sector gear has a start, middle, and end since it goes back and forth. That affects plot. After observing the gears move aimlessly, I realized that some were real, and some were ghost-like and passed through each other inconceivably. A voice in my thoughts answered, "What is this thing?" "This is the future birthing into the now." Stuck with me. Gears halted after a complex dance that created a multidimensional time image. It said, This is the process of becoming. I can see a video feed of future events. Me as older, my kids with their children, and other things. I wanted to feel them when I touched them because some were solid and some were ghostly. One hand brush made me double over in pain and nausea. I instinctively tore through the lattice and hurled it away. I turned all the gears to compensate for the lost one. I say, what's happening now? It said, each gear is the probability of a thought, word, or action in your future. Your destiny is resetting itself around what you have removed. I say, how did I know I could do that? Pull that gear out, removing that future moment. It said, why else are you here? I say, I have no idea. I don't even know what this place is. Is it the in-between? I say, in-between what? I say, everything. The impossible now between the past and the future. I say something like that makes no sense whatsoever. Says, it's impossible and it's of short duration, yet here you are, standing inside the eternity of a single moment. Do you remember who you are in the world to which you belong? Do you remember the world to which your body belongs? If you stay any longer, you can't go back. I would have said, go back where? To your family. What family? I had no idea. Present but depersonalized, lost my identity. It remarked, I have no idea. You see down the truth in how the past is dust. I say, okay, why do some of these gears, these futures that I touch, make me sick and not others? Is it that all choices have unintended consequences, some unfortunate and some not? The pain each brings is your guide. I say, where are the gears that feel good? Then you're not here to feel good. A new gear appeared, and I saw a Ferris wheel with happy, unborn grandkids speeding by with their fingertips on the car. They smirked or threw me, lost in their own world. Without removing the gear, I went by. More gears appeared, some passing through others, some clear and definite, many less so and hard to focus on. However, each one had vivid graphics, a video feed of their significance, and when they rested, I would reach around and pull out a gear that I knew would damage me from my pain. Mistakes caused unintended repercussions and sorrow, not sin. When I saw the gear pile, I say, it's starting to look like if I don't have a bad future, I have no future at all. So, even though I now feel less pain because I'm cleaning up my future, stacking the deck, if you will, so am I going to die soon or from doing all this? Said, your destiny has to fit itself around futures that aren't meant to be. Your number of breaths are already counted. I will worry about your last one. So I don't know how comforting that is. Said, eliminating bad choices doesn't mean you won't make wrong ones. You won't know they are wrong until after they pass, since right and wrong are variable over which you have no control. The answers to what come tomorrow are a waste. Better is understanding the beauty of how everything fits and refits together. It suggests I trust the greater picture. I wondered, what am I missing here in my lack of understanding? I saw only 10%. It asked, what is obviously before you? Grace. No one deserves redemption. It can only be granted by grace. It is your birthright, but it must be chosen at the expense of the world that separates us. I replied, fixing my future is hard, and I feel ashamed of not doing it morally. I'm merely directed by. When will these futures happen? Where and when are irrelevant. It's as if this place were made so I can do one thing, and one thing only, with no chance to screw it up, he remarked. If those with choice make poor use of them, then offering fewer possibilities could be mercy. Better decisions can improve the future, but not the past. Everything is linked. Focus on relationships. Being kind with everyone as I am with you. I thought about my pain and asked, kind, what's gentle about it? It said, you prayed for something for which being here is the answer. And now the man who fell from the sky is not the same and flew into it. Returning to the egg, I replied, I think I can live with this now. The medics told me I was in a plane crash and listed my injuries when I woke up in the hospital. I was comatose for a week after arriving. I believe I was in the in-between and didn't stop yanking out gears until I left. I figured, okay, I've had an out-of-body experience, being somewhat conversant with Eastern ways, but I still really didn't have a name for it. I don't think I knew that this was what a near-death experience was, so just went over and over in my head. And I would say, at this point, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for everything? So the best thing I could do was just sort of say this distilled down into 5 of the most fundamental truths. So starting with the first one, it's like return. What is the best version of myself? And this is a question I'm sure we could ask ourselves on any day of the year. I remember as I woke up, I saw this photo of me taped to the wall. It was obviously put there by someone who wanted me to remember who I was in an effort of encouragement and healing. And this thought, it was kind of like a Match.com photo, if you will. It was me in northern Afghanistan, smoking cigars with the tribesmen. And for a lot of people, I say, yeah, that's Jim, the deadass. It's the best version of Jim. And I was like, who's that? I stared at the photo and thought about how many lifetimes ago that was. To those who knew me, that would be my best self because the world would measure it. But over the next several days, I changed my view about that man. And instinctively, I was coming to see that my best version was not bad, but was the depersonalized conscious being in the in-between, stripped of everything, knowing neither joy nor sorrow, but flowing in the now, that impossible now beyond time. In that state of letting go, laying there in the hospital, coming to grips with my NDE, my mind suddenly began conversing with the in-between. The representation of alcohol was removed from me and held up for consideration, and the in-between literally asked me if I wanted to take it with me into my future or leave it behind. It said if I wanted to keep it as part of my life, then the in-between would carry it for me. If I wanted to leave it in my past, then it would remove all attachment, and it would have no pull on me. I immediately said, without hesitation, I'd leave it behind. And the voice then said, all right, and the representation simply evaporated from sight. I have not had a drink since, nor am I inclined to. I can sit in a bar with people drinking. I can go to a wine store on the way to someone's house to, take something, but it never occurs to me to do it. So I would say that was my first real taste of the power of letting go. Which brings us to truth number 2. What is the art of letting go? Well, whatever answer I could give, putting it in context, I'd say, while the world chases the next big thing, what if we tried a different approach? If we don't like it, we can always ditch it and go back to scratching the dirt like everyone else, swapping stories of how we know someone who knows someone who heard of someone else who made it. To me, life isn't about chasing the next big thing. It's about letting go. It's totally the opposite. It's about the detachment of owning your power to make good choices moment by moment that reduce the number of potentially bad choices and their outcomes. It's an understanding that has no context. It's simply a state of knowing that gives rise to meaning, and meaning backs into our individual lives to give us some sense of our unique purpose. You're not the center of any particular universe, and once you understand this, you see that little of what anyone is doing has much to do with you personally. While dual mind is where something is simplistically only this or that in these binary polarities of us or them, good or bad, vaccinated or unvaccinated, whatever. So we argue and struggle to reconcile those polarities. Meditation and open-mindedness lead to a non-dual state of mind, where we think in terms of and instead of or. That simple change of perspective changes the world. Us and them, not us or them. To let go, start by allowing choices to unfold naturally. Wait as long as you can before choosing, to allow other possibilities to fully mature. Truth number 3. Linear and nonlinear thinking are different from dual and non-dual thinking. Linear thinking involves steps and go/no-go gates, while nonlinear thinking takes a broader view. For example, who robbed the bank? The linear approach uses steps and go/no-go gates, if you will, at each conclusion of a step, deciding whether to move on or go around again, and thinking this way is pretty much about the black and white of things. So what happens to your problem-solving journey if your primary assumptions or procedures break down? Yet, this is how most of the world thinks. The better question would be, why do people rob banks? Non-linear thinking brings understanding by promoting thinking and problem-solving that extends in an outward expansion spiral versus that linear approach. It provides multiple starting points from which you can study or enter a problem, and you start to see different ways through it. Rather than trying to solve that circus symptom, you start looking at causes. It's also a more evolved way of thinking. It's natural to think this way when being present. Instead of following the breadcrumbs, you can see the loaf, Your awareness of this emerges when you realize you aren't using your memory to understand things. You don't need memory to perceive a complex and dynamic pattern moving in front of you when you're really present. It's with no memory of the past or anticipation of the future. It's with your intuition. It's like flying without a net. Truth number 4, being authentic and how even atheists can be spiritual. Extending this thought, I've come to believe that even if you're an atheist but you live your life authentically, then you can be living it spiritually, or at least laying the foundation to do so. There are many people who say they believe in God, but they don't live a life that demonstrates the choices or sacrifices you would expect if you were making the same declarations. You don't have to look far to find examples. But what about the people who do own their shortcomings, who don't justify them or dismiss their bad choices offhandedly, but totally own who they are, warts and all? Isn't there humility there that makes such a person worth learning from? Let me clarify. I'm thinking generally about people who may be different or even quirky, but aren't dangerous to our physical safety or mental health. How unusual is it for us to challenge them about something in their behavior? And with a disarming authenticity, they acknowledge it, confirming it needs further work. For me, I'd rather know where you stand and hear you own your own faults than hide the issues behind our love for a shared goal or dislike of a common enemy. At least then, like I said, I know where you stand. Think about this. If you're setting an example for countless people who have the courage to address their own shortcomings and get to work on their growth, there are people watching you more than you know, and so you're actually helping more than you can imagine. Socrates said, "May I know thyself." I encourage my students not to ask, "Where is my perfect girlfriend or boyfriend?" They should ask themselves, "How must I be loved?" Ask me what makes me happy and engaged, not my life purpose. Ask yourself what life means to you and how your unique talents fit in. What speaks to you? Are you self-sabotaging regularly? What pulls out your best or worst? Self-reflection and real thinking suggest methods to improve. Talking about saving the world is a good sign of honesty. Some advocate peace, some war, some compel obedience. If you say communicate but rescuing the world starts at home, at the kitchen table, on a parent's knee, or at a grandparent's feet, it becomes a life of service to others, regardless of your work. Spirit matters. Doing activities that make you feel connected to others, assisting the less fortunate, occasionally leading from behind, letting others think it was their idea, and sharing the spotlight wherever possible, because no one arrives alone. Not to be inactive and allow others bully you, but some fights are worth waging for yourself or others. But observe the world as it is, relationships as fleeting conveniences or distractions, and remember that we are all passing through. Letting go is the sixth truth. In 2019, I attended my first near-death experience conference and realized that experiencers rarely need introductions. We recognize something within us immediately and have a deep, intimate discourse about our life on Earth. What can I say about life's meaning? Walk it, discover it, and realize that you are nothing you were told you are, and when you die, everything you think you were is gone. When you've asked all your inquiries and there's nothing left to start, God begins through us, all roads. Thank you.